Everybody, welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. If you're new to the show, we take all your nutritional questions here live every Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you've got questions you'd like me to entertain or answer today, go ahead and start typing those into the feed now, into the chat box. Remember, this show is not about medical advice. I'm not your doctor per se, so it's always good that you have a good relationship with a doctor, but we're here to educate you and inform you and empower you to make great decisions about nutrition and your health. So let's dive in to our questions. Hannah says, hi, Dr. O. Ever since entering my 40s, it seems my body has traded in cramps for headaches at the start of my cycle. The headache can last 2 days. Why is this, and what can I do? Hate taking PA. What is PA? At any rate, what can you do about premenstrual cramps, headaches? Probably, well, there's a lot of things that can do this, Hannah, but I would say one of the more common causes of premenstrual headaches is magnesium deficiency and iron deficiency, the combination of those two. Generally, women, when they're going into their cycle, have their uterus lining is starting to slough and they've lost a lot of blood, even though the blood hasn't come out yet. And so what happens is that iron is depleted transiently during the cycle, which can lead to reduced oxygen to your brain and to your muscles. And that can cause both cramping as well as headaches when you have reduced oxygen. So you might consider using the week before, even up to 10 days before your cycle, iron. You might consider using, anywhere from 400 to 800 milligrams a day of magnesium to see if that helps. You can also get those nutrients measured, which I'd highly recommend that you do. Get them measured premenstrually. So ask your doctor for an iron panel and also something called ferritin, Ferritin. You're looking at your iron should be, as a female menstruating, your iron in your blood should be above 70. Your ferritin should also be above 70. So if either one of those are lower than 70, you might consider supplementation with iron. And then you can ask for magnesium testing as well. Probably one of the more accurate ways to test magnesium, at least mainstream, is in the red blood cell, something called a magnesium red blood cell test. You're looking for your magnesium to be above 5. Now, if your doctor's not willing to run those types of tests, you can always go to Gluten-Free Society and check out our INA, our intracellular nutrition analysis test, where we test you for 55 different nutrients, including iron and magnesium. And that might also shed a light on some of the issue at hand. Modi says, how can I know the reason why I can't absorb vitamins? Where to start? Should I try very little amounts? What tests can help determine the state of my body? Well, lots of tests can help determine the state of your body. I think again, you're working from the assumption that you can't absorb, and I would argue that you absolutely can absorb. If you couldn't, you'd probably be wasting away and on your deathbed. So there is absorption occurring. Remember, there's 3 main reasons people develop vitamin and mineral deficiencies. Number 1, it's because you're not eating enough of that nutrient specifically, or total calories. And so just the diet itself is not replenishing. Or you're on a restrictive diet that doesn't contain all the nutrients that are necessary. Classic example of that would be like a vegan diet where there's no vitamin B12, very little iron, very little zinc. We see a lot of deficiencies of that sort in people on those types of diets. Now, so 1 is just what your diet is. Number 2, do you have a problem in your GI tract that is damaging your intestinal lining, causing malabsorption or digestive problems? So, your GI tract from your mouth to your anus, you make enzymes in your saliva, you make acid in your stomach, you make enzymes in your stomach, you make enzymes in your intestine. Is something broken along that pathway that's reducing your body's ability to extrapolate the nutrients from the food that you're eating? That can be measured. So when we talk about testing, there are GI tests, stool sample tests that can be done that can measure digestion and absorption. You might ask your doctor about getting some of those tests done. And then the third common reason people develop deficiency is that they have an extenuating circumstance or underlying condition where they're hyperinflamed. And because when your body's hyperinflamed, you require more vitamins, more minerals to repair the inflammatory damage and to keep going. And so those are not the only three reasons, those are the three big ones. So those are the three that should be investigated. Now, if you want to know whether or not you have vitamin and mineral deficiencies, as I mentioned to Hannah a moment ago, get an INA, an intracellular nutrition analysis. It's a test that measures you for those deficiencies so that you can kind of customize and create a supplemental regimen or a change in your diet that accommodates your unique specific needs. Let's see here. Let's see. Hello, Dr. Osborne. Thanks a million for your help each time to inform us with so much information. My question is why when I take magnesium with B6, I get really nervous. I take B complex without B6. B6, for some people, B vitamins can increase nervousness, and B6 increases or doesn't necessarily increase, but it really strongly supports the production of catecholamines like adrenaline and noradrenaline. And so you may be just taking too much B6. The other thing to consider here is what kind of B6 are we referring to? Pyridoxine hydrochloride or pyridoxine HCl, as it's listed on many supplements, isn't the right kind of B6 to take at high doses. You can get away with lower doses, but I don't really recommend higher doses of pyridoxine hydrochloride. I do recommend if you're going to use B6, make sure it's something called P5P, pyridoxine 5-phosphate or pyridoxal 5-phosphate. Please suggest a list of low gluten. We don't do low gluten, we do no gluten. So there's no such thing as a list of low gluten foods because we like to see no gluten. So we have a list on Gluten-Free Society. It's a pretty comprehensive list. Mel, can we find that and post a link for Ravindar? It's our list, our comprehensive list of no gluten foods. Once you clear your space of mold, what symptoms are you likely to have while you detox? How does that change from the mold exposure symptoms? It can be similar to mold exposure symptoms. A lot of people going through detox have kind of bouts, ups and downs, or bursts, if you will, of symptoms that are in many cases identical to the symptoms they experienced in mold. There are a number of different symptoms of detox to include fatigue, low-grade fevers, or spontaneous fevers, intermittent constipation we sometimes see. We also will see migratory joint pain or migratory inflammatory pain. It's a long list, Melinda, and it can be identical. The key is that if you're doing detox, it's to monitor those mycotoxin levels over time to make sure that you didn't move out of mold into mold, because that happens to a lot of people. And they mistakenly assume that they're detoxing and that their symptoms are detox, but in reality, they're still in mold. So, I mean, the most important thing with mold is to get the symptoms delineated by having testing done to make sure you're not still in it. Is organic green tea okay? Yeah, organic green tea is fine, provided you're not sensitive to it. Remember, there's some caffeine in that, and so some people are sensitive to caffeine. If you're one of them, you might reconsider, but as a general rule, organic green tea is okay. Keratosis pilaris, what would cause this in a 5-year-old and what can be done? Too much sugar, TC, in a 5-year-old, low vitamin C, low omega-3 fatty acids are all very common causes of keratosis pilaris. How important not to wear an EMF connected smartwatch? All these smart devices, including the iPad, earbuds, the watches, all that stuff, you're just poisoning yourself with EMF, in my opinion. Get it off you. You don't need that stuff. If you need a smartwatch to monitor your sleep and to monitor your heart rate, I mean, why? I mean, people love data and love to collect data, but why do you need Wi-Fi to do that? You used to be able to. I don't know if that's the case anymore. There's a company called Jawbone that made a bracelet you could wear that would track your steps, track your heart rate, and other things. without the wireless connection. And but I don't recommend using wireless devices, wearing them on your body for long periods of time. I think it's a bad idea. It concentrates EMF to that area and can create problems. And many of you are it's just like one more straw on the camel's back, right? You might have other problems, and then you add all that EMF Wi-Fi to it, and it's the thing that sets you off. I bought Ultra Nutrients, Ultra Minerals, and Bone Box. I have Hashimoto's and Osteoporosis. Which is best to take? I mean, they're all good to take. The best thing, Barb, is to get your micronutrient status tested, so that you can determine which is actually best to take. Now, Ultra Nutrients and Ultra Minerals are fantastic because they're just like, think of them as food insurance. They're multi-mineral and a multivitamin, and so the combination is really good. And the Bone Box is good. I mean, our research on the Bone Box shows improvements in bone scans over time with those. Now, all that being said, there's a whole lot of things that you should be doing if you have osteoporosis and if you have Hashimoto's. And so what I'd also encourage you to do, we have crash courses on both. Watch my crash course on bone loss, watch my crash course on the thyroid, because there's a lot of pearls I think you'll take away from those classes that will give you a little bit more information as to how to navigate those two conditions. And it will prepare you to ask better questions of your doctor. Remember, there's a study that just came out on Synthroid and levothyroxine, or thyroid medicine, causing bone loss. We now know that even normal healthy doses for people with low thyroid that are on their medication, their thyroid medication, we know those individuals are at risk for osteoporosis, regardless of whether or not they're being over-medicated. Even the proper dose can contribute to osteoporosis. So it's important. Those two conditions are connected. Yeah, Charlie, I mean, you're in the wrong place. Remodeling your diet will affect Addison's, and it will affect pernicious anemia, and it will affect uveitis. I've seen it clinically repetitively over and over and over again. Go watch my testimonial video on Nancy, who was having steroids injected in her eye on a regular basis because of uveitis. And when she changed her diet, she never had to have another steroid injection in her eye. So, you know, get over yourself, get over your I don't even know what to call it, because I don't want to insult you or say anything bad to you, but you just like open your mind a little bit, you know, open your mind. The autoimmune disease has known causes and triggers. You have to open your mind up enough to start asking better, deeper questions. If you start from the premise of none of this can change, then you're right. None of it will change for you. Let's see. Lorinda says, Dr. Osborne, does it matter what time of day, morning or evening, is best to take certain supplements? It's not really a deal breaker, Lorinda, to take something in the morning versus lunch versus the afternoon. There are very few supplements that are best taken. So like, let me give you a couple of examples. If you're taking a multivitamin, it doesn't matter. Morning, noon, night. The caveat there is sometimes when people take supplements that have B vitamins after 4 p.m., they can have more energy and they have a harder time going to sleep. So if you fall in that category, certainly take your supplements before 4 p.m. There are other supplements designed for sleep or to aid or support sleep, such as magnesium 3 and 8 or tryptophan, etc. So if you're trying to take a supplement to help support your sleep, you want to take that within 30 minutes of going to bed. So, but beyond that, there's not a really tremendous amount of time importance around supplementation. More specifically, it's about consistency and compliance of taking them. Is stevia okay to use? Yeah, stevia is okay. Make sure it's organic, but generally speaking, stevia is definitely gluten-free. Since Christmas, I've been developing sores in my mouth. This is from Deb on Instagram. I never did before, and I'm on your no grain, no pain diet. I don't have milk or sugar. Okay, you're getting sores in your mouth and you're on the no grain, no pain diet, and it started since Christmas. Could be, you could have picked up viral infection. You know, there are a number of different herpes viruses that can trigger ulcers or mouth sores. One of the things you might consider, Deb, is lysine, the combination actually of lysine and zinc and elderberry. We have something called Virid, V-I-R-I-D. When people are getting mouth sores, we use this as support for their recovery, and it works really, really well. So that's something you might also consider. Why would a 9-month-old baby that was birthed naturally at home and has no meds, including Novavax, have eczema? Lots of reasons. There could have been some things in utero that mom was doing that was problematic for the baby, that mom could be eating foods that the baby's reactive to, and those proteins are passing through in the breast milk if breastfeeding is the way the baby's being fed. The baby could have certain allergens, and being fed those allergens can contribute to eczema, but also mold. We see a lot of kids develop skin eczema and problems when their environment has mold or other allergens, things they might be allergic to. So I would look at all those as possibilities. You might also look into the soap and lotions and other things that you're washing the baby's clothes with or washing the baby's skin with as a potential for atopic eczema. Let's see here. I have to take a medicine 30 minutes before eating, or some foods don't go down. I have to take a med 30 minutes before eating, or some foods don't go down. So what are you taking, Robert? I'll just throw it back up. Why is this? And there's a lot of reasons why people will have a hyper-responsive gag reflex. One of the biggest reasons, though, has to do with inflammation in the esophagus or stomach. If you haven't done a scope, an upper GI, it might not be a bad idea to have something like that done to see if there's anything going on like that. You might also have some food allergens, in that you're eating these foods consistently enough that your gag reflex has become hypersensitized, and so you just throw food back up as a means to protect yourself from poisoning yourself. It's very common to see that. More common in kids than adults, but not uncommon. Let's see. Are foods with high oxalates more troublesome for those with gluten intolerance? No, not necessarily. The oxalate reactivity is unique to the person. Some people are more sensitive to oxalates, and some people aren't. Part of that has to do with the microbiome. If you've been on a lot of antibiotics, that's a common trigger for oxalate sensitivity. If you're in mold, that's a common trigger for oxalate sensitivity. If you do a lot of green smoothies, there was a huge green smoothie trend, the last 15, 20 years, and people were just overdoing it. And so that's not necessarily oxalate problem. That's an overconsumption of oxalate problem. And there's a difference between, overconsumption and just regular, normal, reasonable consumption as well. B6 deficiency can also contribute to oxalate burdens, as can an imbalance in the microbiome. A yeast overgrowth can contribute to oxalates. An internal mold mold infection like Aspergillus can contribute to oxalate formation. So that's a lot to unpack. If you haven't, check out my oxalate crash course. But people with gluten sensitivity don't generally always react to oxalates and need to be oxalate free. Is using almond flour for pancakes considered gluten-free? If that's all you're using is the almond flour as the base, and there's no wheat, barley, rye, oats, corn, rice, sorghum, millet, teff, buckwheat, amaranth, or quinoa, then yeah, you're in the green. Let's see here. What are ways to regenerate motor neurons and stem cells? Well, regeneration of stem cells requires nutrients. Your cells require, especially like folate and B12. Those are B vitamins important for the replication of DNA and RNA, and so very important for stem cell production. As far as also with stem cells, you could do fasting, 3-day, 3-day fasting, 40, 72 hours can start to regenerate some stem cells as well. As far as regenerating motor neurons, bigger question is not what are the ways to regenerate motor neurons, as it is what are the ways the motor neurons were damaged and have you dealt with them? Because, like, for example, gluten can cause neurological damage to motor neurons. I mean, beyond trauma, like let's just take trauma out of that equation, because trauma certainly can damage motor neurons. But what are other things? Food allergies, infectious microorganisms, nutritional deficits, and chemical exposures can all be problematic and cause motor neuron damage. As far as vitamins are concerned, B vitamins are very critical for motor neuron repair. And choline can be extremely important as a nutrient for motor neuron repair. Lipoic acid can be very important and very helpful in motor neuron repair. So there's a lot there as well. You might check out, I think it was a video, but we also have a blog post, Jim, on causes of nerve damage that you might find helpful. If we can find that, we'll post it into the feed for you. Deborah says, I'm confused about whole grains, which are complex carbs, which you need. So why can't you eat them if you are not sensitive to some of them, like oats, but always gluten-free oats? Wouldn't you have nutritional deficiencies without complex carbs? The answer to that is absolutely no, you wouldn't. There's no need in the human diet for complex carbohydrates. That's a myth of the 70s and 80s and 90s and the athletic. A lot of the athletes were carb loading. A lot of the marathon runners were carb loading. And so that's mostly urban kind of myth from that community. That's not to say there aren't other communities promoting it, but no, there's no, and let me back up, Deborah, too. Oats are not gluten-free. Oats have avenine. That is the type of gluten found in oats. About 15% of the protein in oats is avenine, the gluten avenine. So when a bottle says gluten-free oats, it's not gluten-free. It's gliadin-free. Gliadin is the type or the name of gluten found in wheat. And so if you are confused on that issue, I would highly encourage you to check out No Grain, No Pain, where I break all that down in much more detail and get up to speed on what gluten actually is versus the food laws, because the food labeling laws are we'll just say they're not comprehensive and they're not inclusive of all the different forms of gluten. Let's see here. Go down. I have the book, but won't eat only tuna. Won't have a sweet. TC says, I recently had a chat with somebody from Simple Mills. I asked them about the packaging because there was an aluminum in it, but that the inside touching the product was food grade, that it was also proprietary. Anytime you see proprietary, your hackles should go up and you should ask more questions. But they also said that it was not organic from nature. What gives? I'm not a fan of processed food. A lot of people want the crunch, the cracker, the chip, or whatever it is. And there are a lot of companies that make grain-free, what I would call grain-free junk food. I don't personally eat any of those things on a regular basis at all. It's actually quite rare. We generally at home pretty much eat only real whole food. The packages and the boxes and all that stuff is fine. It's very convenient, but it isn't healthy, and it's not healthy for a lot of reasons. A lot of that stuff, for one, the way it's packaged. Two, many of the Simple Mills products are just not organic, so you run that risk of being exposed to pesticide and herbicide and other chemicals as well beyond the packaging. Can MMS and hydrogen peroxide be used against mold and parasites? My mom is asking. It wouldn't be my first choice at all. If you're talking about a parasite itself, probably some of the better choices for parasite would be like wormwood, artemisinin, strong garlic, oregano, thyme, all good options. And that also includes yeast. Now, mold is different. If you're talking about mold, if you're talking about environmental mold, No, MMS and hydrogen peroxide aren't going to do anything. If you're talking about mold growing inside of you, like a yeast overgrowth or another type of species of mold, then peroxide can be helpful, but again, not my first choice. I would be looking to the herbals, to the antifungal herbals, or something like caprylic acid. Let's see here. What do you think about lithium orotate? A friend has been suggesting as an additional supplement. Diana, we actually test lithium when we do the INA. So if you don't have an INA deficiency or a lithium deficiency on that, then taking more lithium is not really, something that, that I would consider recommend. As far as lithium as a supplement, I think it's just fine. If you call our office, we do have a lithium that we do use. Let's see here. Do you think that colonics are a safe procedure for celiacs? I think it depends on who's doing them. Colonics are fine, provided the facility you're going to is clean and hygienic and not questionable. But at the same time, I'm not a fan of colonics. That's not to say they can't be helpful for some, but I believe that if you're healthy, you should be able to have healthy bowel movements without having to worry about having colonics on a regular basis. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Currently using UT Relief for UTI. However, I have an allergy to pineapple. I would not take the antibiotics using Sovereign Silver, taking my milk. What else will help? I'm not sure I understand the question. You're asking me what other supplements that you might take to help support your urinary tract. I would look at, we have something called UT Shield as well, which has some different herbals in it that might also be helpful that you could look at. Silver's good, so in that regard. Yeah, and just D-mannose, which is D-mannose is like a sugar that makes the urinary tract slippery, so it makes it harder for bacteria to adhere to the surface, and so it's easier for you to flush them out. Why would magnesium give me the wired but tired feeling? Tried multiple forms, but they all keep me up at night. So magnesium, have you had it tested, Brian? Because if you haven't, I don't take magnesium personally because it affects me in a way I don't like. Particularly there are some people that just react poorly to taking magnesium, and that might be who you are. So if you're not deficient in it and you're trying to use it just to try to be more helpful, because a lot of people think they're low in magnesium, get tested. Testing's going to give you better clarity. But as far as giving you a kind of a tired feeling, for some people, a wired and tired feeling, magnesium can do that. And so again, are you low in it? If you're low in it and it's still doing that with you, you might try coupling with vitamin B1. You might try coupling it with calcium. They balance each other out. But beyond that, I just don't know that I would just take it if it's giving you that kind of symptom. Let's see, Vera is asking, Dr. O, mind explaining why tinnitus happens? And if it's related to a deficiency, what test should I be asking for? Any connection between sleep apnea and tinnitus? Well, tinnitus is typically either ear damage, which can happen over time, especially in today's world where people are wearing headphones and listening to loud music hours upon hours. But outside of that, as far as nutrients are concerned, B12 deficiency, B1 deficiency, calcium and magnesium deficiency, sometimes we'll see yeast overgrowth or parasites contribute to tinnitus because they can create chemicals that damage nerves. And remember, your inner ear is fed by a nerve, the vestibulocochlear nerve, which is where that tinnitus is most likely stemming from. Thanks, Doc. I've solved everything in the last 3 years, or almost everything, with no grain, no pain. Off medication completely. One thing still remaining again is, when can we get your supplements to the EU? We're still working on it. I hope we'll have a solution here in 2025. I'll keep you posted. Kersey says, we live in a moldy home and my husband has a lot of body pain. We're gluten-free, still going grain-free, or will going grain-free help his body pain while living in our moldy home? Possibly, Kersey. I've seen, usually when people are in mold and they go grain-free, they do get some pretty good improvement, but usually that improvement plateaus if the mold is bad enough. So it's possible he'll get some good improvement, and it's definitely worth a shot. Won't hurt him, won't hurt your family, but it might help quite a bit. Remember that if you're living in mold, one of the reasons why grains can exacerbate a moldy environment is because grains can also oftentimes are contaminated with mycotoxins or mold toxins. And so it's just one more way that the body's being exposed to those poisons. Let's see. Hello, I'm on month 3 of no grain, no pain. I'm finding a lot of meat that says 100% grass-fed or organic, but not both. If I had to choose, which would it be? I would go with 100% grass-fed. Because organic, a grass-fed cows generally, they're eating grass, they're grazing. Whereas organic, that's because they're eating organic grain in their feed. So I would choose 100% grass-fed over the organic delineation for sure. Hello, Doc. How does a celiac patient digest vitamin A? Like anyone else, you eat it in your diet, you absorb it. Vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin, so as you're eating it, if your liver's healthy and you're making adequate bile, your gallbladder secretes the bile. The bile emulsifies the fat-soluble vitamin A and helps you absorb it. So unless you have a gallbladder that's missing, and a lot of celiacs have had their gallbladder removed, and if that's the case, you might consider using, we have something called Lipogest, which is a supplement that helps to support people that have their gallbladders missing. So that may be something you want to consider. How long does it take to heal from iron deficiency anemia? My doctor thinks it's due to heavy menstruations. Ferritin was 7. Wow, that's pretty low, Jessica. So it's not how long does it take to heal from iron deficiency anemia. It's how long does it take to start feeling better. So, okay, let me give you just a little context around the red blood cells. So anemia is when you lose a lot of blood, right? And your iron drops, which is what ferritin is. It's stored iron in your liver. And now you can't adequately produce hemoglobin, which is the protein that carries oxygen in your red blood cells. Now, your red blood cells have a 3-month life cycle. So every 3 months, you have a completely brand new set of red blood cells. Now, it's not like all the cells in your blood are born today and then they die exactly 3 months later. You're constantly, every day, you're making new red blood cells. So over the course of a month, you're going to replace approximately 1/3 of your red blood cells. And if you're taking iron, you're going to feel a lot better as those new red blood cells are being produced and have a greater capacity for hemoglobin. So you're going to feel better within the month. It's going to take at least, though, 3 months to kind of have a complete life cycle turnover of all of the current red blood cells in you. So making sure they have enough iron, 3 months would be the answer, but you should feel a lot better before 3 months. It shouldn't take 3 months for you to notice improvements in your energy as you start supplementing. How can I increase my white blood cells? I'm 62 and they've been low for years. That's Terry on YouTube asking that. Why are they low? That's the big one. So, what are some reasons why white counts can be low? Number one, you could have a chronic environmental exposure to something that you're reactive to. The most common cause of environmentally induced low white blood cell counts, in my experience, is mold exposure. So consider investigating for that, Terry. But B vitamins, especially B12, especially folate deficiencies, can contribute to low white blood counts, white blood cell anemias. Gluten sensitivity, notorious for reducing white counts as well. So if you haven't looked at those things, that's where I would probably start. What's the best food sensitivity test I can buy? Also, if I live in California, am I able to set up a virtual appointment? Yeah, Anna, call our office. Put our number in, would you, Mel? For Anna. What questions to ask when doing celiac blood work? It depends. It depends on the doctor, and it depends on if you're trying to look for celiac disease, it's I think more specifically, it's not what questions to ask, it's what should I understand about what celiac blood work can actually tell me. And so if you're getting celiac blood work, it's very important that your doctor, and most doctors that are doing celiac blood workups know this, but make sure. A lot of the antibody tests that they're measuring two types of antibodies. They're measuring IgG and IgA antibodies to determine, whether you're reactive to gluten or whether they think you have celiac disease. So there's three main tests that they order in that regard. They order something called tissue transglutaminase antibodies. They order endomysial antibodies, and they can order something called anti-gliadin antibodies. Those are the three main ones that doctors use. Again, those antibodies are to IgG and IgA. Some of the problems I have seen when the doctor is doing the patient a favor but doesn't understand this very well is they don't qualify the tests by running total IgG and total IgA first. Meaning that if you have an IgA deficiency and we're using an IgA antibody to try to determine if you're reacting to gluten or have celiac, we're going to get a false negative on a test if your IgA is deficient. And an IgA deficiency is very common in people with celiac disease. So they need to qualify the tests by doing what's called a total IgA and a total IgG test as well. So adding those to the celiac blood test is going to be an important ask if they're not already doing it. Outside of that, it's important to know those tests are notorious for coming back falsely negative. Not so much false positive, but if they come back positive, you probably have a problem. But if they come back negative, it doesn't mean you don't have a problem. I see this all the time. And it's because there are multiple mechanisms of gluten reactivity beyond IgA and IgG. IgA and IgG are just two of the potential mechanisms of how gluten can affect a person. And so not comprehensive, and so you're not going to get the full picture. Outside of that, they generally will, if they don't tell you, you should know this. If you're not currently eating gluten, you can really get a false negative on those antibody tests, because antibodies for gluten have a half-life of about 60 days, meaning that they're, if you've been not eating gluten for 4 or 5 months, and then your doctor says, well, let's test you for gluten. That way we can see if you can start eating it again. They need to make sure you're eating gluten for 2 months for those tests to be accurate. Now, some people go gluten-free and they feel so good, they don't want to start eating gluten again to go do some blood tests because they don't want to feel like garbage for 2 months, so that the doctor can tell them what they already know or what their body has already told them. So that's a decision that you have to make when you're trying to weigh out, the diagnosis versus just listening to your body. When ordering your nutritional test, who would you go to get your blood drawn? When you order our test, just call our support staff. They'll guide you. There's places we use all over the country to do blood draw. So just ask them, and they can help you navigate that, because it's different depending on where you live. Let's see. When's your food sensitivity test going to be available again? We're working on it. As soon as we have an update, we'll let you know. We're doing some updated research, and so we've just halted that for the time being, but it's coming back. What are the best tasting brands that are gluten and grain-free? I'm a little biased here, Deborah, but we spent years developing a recipe for grain-free bread. It's called Warrior Bread. If you go to Gluten-Free Society, You can read about it and check it out. Mel, can we post for Deborah? Okay, awesome. How can diet interfere with hormones? Lots of different ways. Let's say that in your diet, you're being exposed to microplastics. Microplastics because you're drinking out of a plastic water bottle, or you're eating foods, heating foods up in plastic, eating with plastic silverware, that kind of thing. Those microplastics can bind to your estrogen receptors and interfere with your hormones linking and docking with them. That's one way. I mean, plastics aside, let's say you're eating food that's ultra processed and has low nutritional value. Well, you need vitamins and minerals to make your hormones. They don't just magically appear. For example, in order to make the hormone estrogen, that requires magnesium, that requires selenium, that requires boron, that requires fat, the right kinds of fat. And it requires cholesterol, right? Of all things, people so scared of cholesterol nowadays, but all of your cholesterol is your mother fat that makes your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone. So how does diet affect that? Tremendously. You should check out, we've got some shows on hormones and nutrients that I would encourage you to check out. What if you make your own crackers, not a different flours like almond, out of different flours like almond, tapioca, coconut? Are they going to be okay? Yeah. I mean, if you're making your stuff from scratch at home, I think you're going to avoid certainly any of the taboo things, because you're going to be sourcing all the ingredients and you know where it all comes from. So I think you're okay in that regard. I don't understand your questions, Holly. Say eating soup for lunch, shame about break, what to replace. Can you reword that? Maybe I can get you some clarity. I have 2 sisters and 1 brother. I have psychological problems that diagnosed with celiac disease. Is that the cause? Celiac, I mean. Really need an answer. Can be. I have family members. I have my brother is schizophrenic. My mom is bipolar, and has a lot of other mental things that she struggles with. My sisters have had their fair share of mental problems as well. And in pretty much all cases, gluten is the primary driving factor. There's as an example, bread madness, which is a term that's old, refers to bread causing schizoaffective like hallucinations, schizophrenia. And that could be the gluten itself. We see that a lot of schizophrenics have gluten antibody, positive gluten antibody levels. But it could also be that like I said earlier, many of the grains contain mold toxins, and many mold toxins can be hallucinogenic and cause mental disorders. We know for a fact that depression can be driven by gluten as well. There have been a number of research studies on that. I see it clinically all the time. So yeah, the celiac, it's not so much the celiac disease as it is that the gluten causes the celiac, but the gluten can also cause the mental problems, right? The gut and the brain are highly connected. And so a lot of people are just so focused on celiac, they forget to look beyond the intestine. But in medicine, in medical literature, there's a term that we actually use because it's so common, and that term is extraintestinal manifestations. So when we talk about celiac disease, the vast majority of people that are affected by gluten don't have gut problems so much as they have what are called extraintestinal manifestations, problems beyond the gut. This includes the psyche, the brain, the mind, the nervous system. Is chia seed okay? Chia seed's fine. It's gluten-free. So you definitely can use that. Some homeopathic medicines contain venom from some animals. Is it safe to take them? I mean, I like homeopathic remedies. I think it's important, asking about safety. I mean, you should be working with a homeopath, or you should be working with a doctor that understands homeopathy. That would be a better way to go about it. But as a general rule, homeopathic medicines are pretty safe. Some countries, they're sold over the counter. You know, and generally, if something's too terribly dangerous, you can't get it over the counter. You have to get it. It's a prescription. Thoughts on hydrogen water? You know, I think it's overinflated. I think the benefits are overinflated. That's not to say there can't be some benefits. Some of the research shows some benefit. I just haven't seen it do anything fantastically great clinically, you know, so it's not something I would encourage people to spend a bunch of money on. How can I increase? Oh, let's see. I think I answered that one. What's the about B12 deficiency? After 10 years, I found out that all my symptoms were due to B9 and B12 deficiency. I've lowered red blood cell and hemoglobin. What do you recommend to recover quicker? Supplementation. Injecting B12 and folate is not faster than sublingual, in my experience. I mean, you can do injections. I'm not opposed to that. I just don't think it's any quicker than sublingual or oral. So, I mean, the quickest way is to consistently supplement, monitor your levels, and make sure everything's coming back up, and make sure that is actually the problem. And let it come back and let us know if that works out for you. We just got our mold remediated in our home in Texas. Do you have a recommended list of mold literate doctors in Texas? Are you currently? Yeah, call my office, Susan. It's a tough list. It's a tough ask. Mold is right now is the Wild West. It's not to say there aren't good doctors out there. There certainly are, but you know, we all have our varying opinions, and I hate to make recommendations on something that can be so deadly. Mold is no joke. Don't mess around with it. You want to definitely make sure you're working with somebody with vast array of experience. How are you going to escape mold? Any house or apartment building is going to have some mold because of heavy rains and extreme heat. It's a great question. It's a great question. Look, the EPA claims that more than 50% of buildings are water damaged. I don't disagree with the question. I think part of the problem is cheap labor, fast construction. You know, so part of the issue with mold is that there needs to be legislative change around how we build homes, because the way we're building apartment complexes and the way we're building homes, there's really no checkpoints for preventing mold. And so a lot of corners get cut, and a lot of these buildings, they're throwing them up in rainstorms and then drying them in with wet wood in the walls, and you're going to get mold that way. So I don't disagree. It is one of the challenges that we face. It's one of the biggest questions that has not been answered well at this point, but we're working on it. Oh, here's Larry updating us. Larry, thanks for the update, Larry. Larry says, still getting stronger without any Beano. He was reacting to that Beano enzyme. Still taking benfotiamine and a multivitamin. Theory there was the Beano was causing the B1 deficit. Is there a best brand of fresh caught water packed tuna or salmon? I've heard some brands even now still add mercury. They don't add mercury, Dia. That would be illegal. Nobody wants to add mercury. You know, it would cost them to. It's what some brands do is if they find a batch that's too high in mercury, they mix that batch with a batch that's low enough in mercury, and so then all the batches can pass. But there's not a best brand to my knowledge. You know, you're trusting the companies. I mean, there are some good companies. I mean, Vital Choice is a pretty good company for that if you haven't checked those guys out. Has mold toxicity ever been linked to venous thrombosis? Where can I learn about mold toxicity and health? Susan, go to moldjacked.com. Moldjacked.com. That's our new hub for mold. This year is, in my circle here, we are doing all things mold. We're doing all things to educate people about mold. And so that's going to be our hub of where we put everything. You can also watch our trailer for our movie that's coming out in December. And, but make sure you put your name on our email list so that we're going to be sending stuff out all year long about mold to educate people. And to answer your question, is mold linked to venous thrombosis? The answer is yes. Mold can cause systemic inflammatory problems in the bloodstream, leading to increased platelet aggregation, causing thrombosis. Please explain how your nutritional test works. What cells are tested and why? Why are they? How are they tested, and who sets the values, and how are they decided? Yeah, our test was designed originally at University of Texas by biochemists. It was about 20 years of research done on lymphocytes. Lymphocytes, why lymphocytes? Because they have a 6-month life cycle. And so as a cell, when we're looking at nutrition, we don't want an analysis of what you ate yesterday or what you ate today. We want an analysis of the average of what you've been eating and how well nourished your cells are. So when we have a 6-month cell or a 6-month life cycle for a cell, it makes an ideal window. So think of it like you're watching the whole movie instead of looking at one still frame of the movie. 6-month analysis is far more accurate. So that's one aspect. We use lymphocytes to do that. And the reason why we use lymphocytes, also based on the research of Dr. Shive, is that the lymphocyte is metabolically more like any other cell, or let me reframe that. It's metabolically more like every cell than any other cell we could pick. So it more resembles the heart and the liver and the spleen and the skin and the blood cells, etc. The other reason why we use a lymphocyte is because they're easy to access. So, if we were trying to get the most accurate documentation of nutritional analysis, we would take biopsies of every tissue you have, and that's just not a feasible or practical thing. But a simple blood draw is very much feasible and practical. As far as how the technology works, when we do the blood draw, we grab lymphocytes from a patient's blood, and then we stimulate those cells in your own serum. So we use your own serum as a growth plate to stimulate growth of the cell, because growth of the cell is an outcome, right? So what we're trying to do is measure cellular functionality when you're looking at an outcome versus looking at a level. Because if you look at serum blood tests, and the reason why I harp on serum inadequacies and inaccuracies in the blood is because you're comparing a level of a nutrient in your blood to the level in 10,000 other people on average is blood, right? And you're not those other people. And there's, aside from doing a comparative view to other people, there's also the fundamental problem of your blood. Your liver redistributes nutrients in your blood when you have deficiency. So looking in your blood can be very misleading, and you can get a lot of false negatives in terms of nutritional deficiency. But we do lymphocyte proliferation. So we stimulate your lymphocytes to grow, and we measure how that growth function performs. So we have a baseline of growth rate of your cells. Then we go back in and we repeat the test in triplicate. But when we repeat the test, we give the cells one nutrient at a time. For example, we'll give B1. And when we give B1, if we see improvements in the growth outcomes of your cell, that means your cell enhances, the functionality of your cell improves when it has more B1. And so the scoring system that we use is a percentage growth rate. It's not a quantification of the amount floating in your blood. It's a percentage improvement of growth rate. So for example, we see sometimes where we'll give I'm going to use B1 as the example. When we give B1 to a person's cell, we might see a growth rate enhancement of 140%, meaning their cell's growth improved 140% when we gave it more vitamin B1. So that's how our technology works. It's measuring the outcome of growth and functionality of the cell. And so in this way, you can tell that the inside of the cell is devoid or has less of that nutrient than what it needs to perform its duty effectively and efficiently. So hopefully that helps answer the question for you. And you can learn more about it going to Gluten-Free Society. We talk about the science there as well. Is it necessary to add minerals back to reverse osmosis water purification? Yeah, you should. You get a lot of minerals from your food, but when you drink RO water, that water can actually, it can cause your cells to crenate. In essence, it can cause your cells to push the minerals that they're storing inside of them into the serum to offset the RO water's lack of minerals. So it's best to add minerals back to your RO water for sure. What tests can you do to confirm yeast overgrowth? I mean, depends on where the yeast overgrowth is, because you can have yeast overgrowth in a lot of different places. If you're talking about GI tract, the best way to do that is to do what's called a culture, a sample, a culture and a microscopic analysis of stool samples. If you're talking about the sinuses, the best way to know is to do a swab culture. Same thing with skin. If you're talking about blood, there are antibodies and other things that we can look at that might help to determine that. What are the causes of craniocervical instability? I mean, there can be a lot. I mean, muscular weakness and muscular tightness, chronic inflammation are probably two of the biggest. Our modern lifestyles also contribute to it. Computers and poor posture and everything else contribute to changes in the muscular structures around that region of the spine, leading to weaknesses and imbalances. Charcot-Marie Tooth syndrome, any dietary recommendations to control it? Lots of B vitamins. Get your nutrient levels tested, but you can do really well with a B complex also. Do you have a protocol for food and supplementation for neuropathy? There's not one protocol, because neuropathy has multiple causes. So, I mean, generically speaking, you could have a neuropathy because your folate's low. You could have a neuropathy because your B12 is low. You could have a neuropathy because your copper is low. You could have a neuropathy because your B2 is low, or your B1, or your choline. So neuropathy has multiple causes nutritionally. So there's not like one catch-all protocol outside of just a good quality multivitamin to hit a lot of bases. But what I would recommend, if you've got neuropathy, is get tested, because there may be a key deficit that a multivitamin won't cover. Like, multivitamins are not going to contain usually enough vitamin B1 if your neuropathy is caused by vitamin B1 deficiency. Just, again, as an example. Can you develop blood clots due to mold toxicity? Yes, you can. What supplement protocol would you use to improve sleep? There's different things. I mean, number one, I'd say there's 6 things you need to be focused on to make sure that you're optimized for sleep. And that would be, number 1, the right diet. Number 2, exercise daily. And that's to tolerance. Number 3, sunshine daily. Number 4, clean air. Number 5, clean water. And number 6, stress management. And then sleep hygiene, you add sleep hygiene to that, which would be get in bed on time. Don't expose or bombard yourself to a bunch of blue light in the evening time. But beyond those fundamental just behaviors, there are a number of different things that people can take to enhance sleep. And there are a number of nutrient deficiencies that can contribute to poor sleep. B vitamin deficiency can cause trouble sleeping. Magnesium deficiency can cause trouble sleeping. Tryptophan, the amino acid, is necessary to make melatonin, which helps us sleep. So if your tryptophan is low, it's going to disrupt your sleep. So there's a lot to unpack for that. I would encourage you to watch my sleep crash course. It's about an hour long, but we'll give you a lot more information, and then you can see what you're applying and what you're not applying, and then you can kind of mash out what you need to change. I have Hashimoto's for 14 years, have sludge and stones in my gallbladder. What can I do to avoid removal? Not having severe pain, just mild ache at times. You gotta make sure you're eating the right diet for sure. Gluten-free, grain-free would be top of the list in terms of that, because a lot of people's gallbladders start to form stones as a result of inflammation in the liver. You might want to get your vitamin C levels and your taurine levels checked, because the deficiency of those nutrients can cause stones and sludge to form. So I would look at those as well. I heard that taking immune boosting supplements are harmful for people with autoimmune disease. It's poppycock, Lorinda. That's what people who don't understand autoimmune disease and the mechanism of action say, because you're not boosting the immune system when you take supplements. It's a misnomer. There's no boosting. What you're doing is you're supporting the immune system's natural ability to recognize good from bad when you take immune, or we won't use the term boosting, we'll use immune supporting supplements, but there's no such thing as immune boosting. Your immune system needs nutrients to regulate how it behaves. Let me give you an example. Zinc and vitamin D deficiencies can cause the immune system to become overzealous and overreact. Now, vitamin D and zinc also support immune system's functionality to help you fight bacteria and viruses and other infections. Taking them can be very helpful in that regard, but it's not going to boost your immune system and make, if you have autoimmune disease, make it stronger and make your autoimmune disease worse. It's simply going to help your immune system recognize better what's friendly versus what is not, because autoimmunity is when the immune system is appropriately behaving, but it's behaving too aggressively because it's overwhelmed. It's like a soldier that's been at war too long and trying to accommodate back into civilization. You know, if somebody comes up behind a soldier and taps him on the shoulder, and that soldier's got post-traumatic stress, they might get punched in the face. Well, think of that. That's your immune cells when you have autoimmune disease. So the name of the game is to try to give your body what it needs to regulate immune function. And so supplements don't really boost the immune system. They support its proper function. And that's the beef of it. So don't have a fear in that regard. There's not a single shred of evidence or a study ever done that shows that supplementing causes your autoimmune disease to get worse. Would you address gout? My son has gout and I'm celiac. Could it be due to him being gluten sensitive? Yeah, I've seen a number of cases of gout improve. Uric acid levels improve dramatically, or can, on a gluten-free diet, on a healthy gluten-free diet, not an ultra-processed gluten-free diet, but a healthy one. You might also, talk to your son about using cherries in his diet and using vitamin C. Very profound impacts on gout. Can you explain how your Gluten Shield product works, please? Sure, Kathy. Gluten Shield is an enzyme that degrades gluten. It's not designed to allow somebody to go and eat gluten. It's designed for somebody who is eating out or traveling, and is it going to eat food that someone else prepared and they can't 100% control the ingredients. They're still trying to eat gluten-free, but they're looking for a level of protection, right? So if 20 parts per million is the quantity of gluten that is required to do damage. And so what Gluten Shield does, let's say you get some minor exposure, what Gluten Shield does is it puts down a layer of enzymatic protection to support you from having a severe reaction. But it is not designed for you to eat pizza or pasta or bread or drink beer or anything else. There's a lot of companies out there talking about their gluten enzyme products, and the way they position them is that you can eat gluten if you take our enzyme, and those people are lying, and those people are unethical, and you shouldn't buy from them because they're liars. And people that will lie about the actual purposeful use of a product will also lie about what they put in that product. And so, to me, that's a trust issue. So anyway, I hope that's helpful for you. Gluten Shield is designed to protect you from hidden or accidental or cross-contamination exposure, but not designed to help you go eat gluten on purpose. Hello from New York, Scott says. I'm on month 3.5 of no grain and feel great. Almost unbelievable. Love it, Scott. Often when shopping locally, I see 100% grass-fed beef, organic beef, but never both. Oh, I think we answered that question earlier. So, okay, we're covered there. Can thalassemia make it more difficult to recover from mold toxicity by rendering treatments less effective? It can, Allison. Depending, have you had morphology done on your red blood cells? That's ask your doctor to do morphology and let's see what your red blood cells look like and how they're shaped, because that's going to affect the way they can translate or carry oxygen to your tissues. And there's some things that you can do to aid that. You're not going to cure thalassemia; it's genetic, but there's certainly some nutrition support that can be done to help with that. And so examples would be like vitamin C and B vitamins can oftentimes be very helpful in that situation. Is black stuff growing on a deck mold? Probably. Can it be cleaned with vinegar? It can be, but it's probably not going to be super effective. If I were looking at trying to clean off mold, it would just be to clean it off, not be to try to kill it. When you try to kill mold, it sporates and grows and gets angry and tries to survive. Just like if somebody tries to attack you, you fight back. Mold does too. So the best way to get rid of mold is to clean it, not to go to war with it. And so a good power sprayer make sure if you're doing that, you're wearing a mask so that you don't blow all that mold dust up into your lungs. I was told to only buy organic fruits and vegetables from the U.S. Every time I go shopping, everything comes from Peru or Mexico. Should I buy them from that country or stay away? It's a second choice. If you can't find it in the U.S., then you're somewhat limited, but I certainly would try. You might go to localharvest.org and see what kind of farmers markets are in your area, or food co-ops where they grow local organic produce. What are your thoughts on 72-hour fast with electrolytes? I like fasts. I think 72-hour, if you can tolerate a 72-hour fast, Bobby, it's not a bad idea. I mean, most people can. Where I've seen people struggle with fasting is usually with women if they're not healthy enough yet. So if you're feeling pretty good overall and you're just wanting to do kind of a New Year reset, go for it. If you're struggling in how you feel, fasting you might not be ready for a full 72-hour fast. Let's see here. Good afternoon, Dr. Osborne. I am a client with gluten sensitivity and deficient in many nutrients as well, along with ferritin and amylase numbers that are no good. I'm on a low fermentation diet with green light on all herbal teas. Does this include herbal teas that are considered detox teas? I'm hooked on toasted dandelion. Dandelion's fine. I only drink, let's see, 1 cup at night, but I'm concerned about it being a diuretic and losing the supplements. You're probably okay at 1 cup. I wouldn't be super worried about that. What's the proven effects of gluten on mental health? I think I just talked about that a minute ago. You go over to Gluten-Free Society. We've got all kinds of videos and articles on gluten and mental health as well. I have low iron and ferritin. Hematologist in primary care strongly suggesting iron infusion. Is this treatment safe? In today's world, I wouldn't do it unless my life were dependent on it. And here's why. Our blood supply is contaminated with spike. I wouldn't do it unless I had a family member who I knew didn't receive that, that COVID treatment, who donated blood that I could use. But if I couldn't confirm it that way, I probably would just eat a lot of liver and take iron supplementation. But more importantly, why is your iron and ferritin so low? This, one of the most common causes of idiopathic, what's unknown cause, right? Idiopathic iron deficiency, one of the most common causes of that I have seen is gluten sensitivity. So, and we'll see what's called refractory anemia, where people get infusions, they'll take iron supplements, but the anemia won't correct until they change their diet. It's because gluten can damage the area of the intestines and stomach that help you absorb the iron from your diet. So if you're low, I mean, I don't know what your levels are, but I mean, if your ferritin is 5 or higher, I think you could probably correct that with nutritional supplementation. But again, talk to your doctor, because I don't know you. I don't want you to construe this as medical advice, and I don't know enough about you and your case to say don't have an infusion, but those are just my thoughts. I was told I have a plaque gene. Is there a vitamin that would help me control my arteries from forming plaques? All those people out there hawking, genetics as predetermined ways to scare you into taking a bunch of supplements, they're wrong. And you can have genetic predisposition. You can certainly have genetic mutations in SNPs, but it's not that simple as I have this gene, that causes an increased risk of plaque formation. Therefore, I need to take this supplement for the rest of my life. I don't recommend, thinking of it that way. Can you detox spike? We use something called matrozyme, which is a proteolytic enzyme formula. And we also use high doses of N-acetylcysteine or NAC, Maxine. So with those two things, that's what we use when we're trying to help a person out in that way. I have IG Nephropathy, kidney transplant 25 years ago, recently gone grain-free due to seeing your videos. Will I see my numbers improve? If so, how long until I see improvement? You might. I've seen IgA nephropathy improve dramatically in a number of people who go and change their diet. But I can't predict the future any better than anyone else. Yeah, you've got a kidney transplant, which probably means you're on some kind of an immunosuppressant, and so that's going to have an impact on your health. There are other things that may also be affecting your kidneys. So it's if you, just going grain-free may help, but if it doesn't, you really need to think about working with somebody who understands, how to support you nutritionally to do the best to improve your kidney function overall. Are sunflower seeds and sunflower lecithin okay on a gluten grain-free diet? Yes, they are. My functional doctor recommended that I eat Greek yogurt based on the IFM food plan. What's your opinion? I think, did your functional doctor test you for food allergies or dairy problems? Is that Greek yogurt that he's recommending A1 or A2 milk? Because the A1 milks are potentially very problematic and autoimmune inducing for many people, especially people with gluten sensitivity, Janet. So I'm always leery when I hear somebody say, my functional doctor recommended blank, simply because I see so many people in my practice where they had a functional medicine doctor, or they had a doctor who called themselves a functional medicine doctor, but there was no objective evaluation of the patient. And so I don't know whether maybe they did objectively evaluate you, Janet. I don't want to speak bad of or ill of your doctor either, but it's not a functional medicine doctor if they're just throwing a random diet out to you and saying, you should do this because I said so. When you're seeing is different, when you're coming to my show and you're just asking generalized questions and I try to give you generalized good guidance and information, that's different than if you came to my practice and said, I need your help. Because if you came to my practice and said, I need your help, I would run a battery of objective measurements to see what you're allergic to, what's going on in your microbiome, what nutritional deficiencies that you have, how is your gut working, does it digest effectively, do you have enzyme deficiency, do you have other types of problems that are going on that we also need to consider so that we could make the decision about whether or not eating yogurt, I know it sounds like a simple thing, but is the right move for you, because you could be allergic to dairy, but you could also be allergic to ingredients that are found in the yogurt that company uses to process their yogurt. So that has to be teased out. And so hard for me to tell you to just go eat yogurt without having that information. But because you're working with a functional medicine doctor, that's the question you want to go back. That's the conversation you want to go back and have for sure. That a toxic substance called putrescine gets created when afternoon on. Not something I would be tremendously worried about. I'm diagnosed with both hypothyroid and adrenal issues. Does high cortisol cause issues with hypothyroid? Can. or does untreated hypothyroid over a long time cause adrenal issues and irregular cortisol? Both. They're intrinsically linked. They're intrinsically linked, the thyroid and the adrenal glands, as well as the pituitary gland. We call that the axis, right? It's a hormonal axis, and they all kind of help regulate each other. And so it's like a symphony between those three areas of the body regulating hormones. And so if one is off, the others can be off. And that's why it's just a good idea, if you're doing anything there, that they're all being evaluated. Bladder infection, what can I do? UT Relief, UT Shield are two products that we carry to support bladder health. Barbara, you might check those out. What if I want pain and I want to eat grains? Then do. Stay off dairy. Let's see, no, not a question, that's a comment. Is it possible for post-shingles infection to cause issues with the migrating motor complex leading to post-infectious IBS? If so, what to do? Wouldn't be my first thought of what would be causing migrating motor complex dysfunction. I would say most people that develop shingles have immune problems, and that's why they developed the shingles in the first place. And so we have to ask a deeper question, which is what is going on in their immune system that's allowing for a varicella zoster virus to take hold and create problems. And so I'd reverse engineer why your immune system wasn't protecting you. Do you recommend DEXA scans for people on levothyroxine? You can get them, but DEXA scans as a sole means to evaluate bone health is a poor test. It's a test that can be used, but it shouldn't be used alone. It should be used. You should also be getting tests that measure what are called bone turnover markers in your urine. So there's tests like osteocalcin and telepeptide. There's deoxypyridinoline. These are all urine tests that measure how fast your bone is breaking down versus how fast it's building. The other test that you should get if you're worried about bone health and being on levo is your micronutrient status. You should have your minerals checked, because minerals are what mineralize your bone. You should have your amino acid levels checked, especially like your branched chain amino acids, your leucine, your valine, your isoleucine, and then also your proline, because these are the matrix that forms the backbone of your bone. And so checking your nutritional status is far more important, in my opinion, far more accurate way to assess bone health than a DEXA scan, because all a DEXA scan does is it measures how well your bones absorb an X-ray, and then it compares you to a 35-year-old person. So that, take it for what it is, but it's not a very good indicator of your bone health. Remember, how many X-rays your bone can absorb doesn't mean healthy bone. And I think doctors have oversimplified it for the sake of running tests on women every couple of years to recommend bone drugs. I think the pharmacy companies have really pushed that mantra and made it a standard of care when it should never have been a standard of care. Bone scans are, are a piece of information of the puzzle, but not anything I'd rely on. I had a video on bone scan myths. You should check that video out. Top 5 supplements everyone should have. Multivitamin. It depends. I mean, the top 5, probably a multivitamin, definitely an omega-3, a probiotic. Most people probably vitamin D, just because most of the people I see that are sick and struggling have vitamin D deficiencies in a big way. And then, beyond that, a good digestive enzyme would be another good one, as far as like just the top 5. And that's just, again, very generic list. Now, if you gave me a litany of things that your goals were, that list would probably change, right? But for the average person, that's a pretty good place to start. When avoiding coffee, is it about the caffeine, the potential for mold, or both, or something else? Yes, all of that. It's about the caffeine. It's about the mold, and it's really more about the mycotoxins that are very common in coffee. But it's also about the diuretic action. of caffeine. And it's also about the adrenal stimulatory action of even beyond the caffeine. There are other chemicals in coffee that do that for many people. There's a lot of people who are trying to recover are sympathetic dominant. And so coffee is keeping them that way, and it makes it harder for them to repair. Although I'm gluten-free and a whole food diet, I'm continuing losing weight. What suggestions? Count your calories for 7 days, Jim. Count and see how much you're getting in. If your diet, for all intents and purposes, is solid, it's very possible you're just not eating enough food. I see it all the time. People come to me, I'm losing weight, and we end up finding out they're eating, 100 to 200 less calories a day than what their body requires to sustain, healthy weight. And so they're losing weight consistently over time. Thoughts about taking tryptophan, serotonin, and GABA? I like tryptophan. I like to test people for tryptophan deficiency, though, to make sure that it's something they may need. But tryptophan is a pretty safe supplement to use. So is GABA. Both can work really, really well for people that have anxiety or panic issues. Lithium as well. If your lithium is low, then definitely lithium, because that could be one of the main triggers for why that's happening for you. When avoiding, I think I answered that one. Let's see. I can hear my pulse in my left ear. Could it be related to my inner ear, or what else? Priscilla, are you a high anxiety person? Are you amped up or ramped up? Because when you can hear your pulse in your ear, when it's that loud, it could be that you're overproducing adrenaline or noradrenaline, and that's stimulating that increased pulse pressure, and now you're hearing it as a result. So, if that's the case, there are a lot of ways to cope and adapt and deal with stress or heightened anxiety. And we've done crash courses on that kind of thing, and I would encourage you to look at those. What do you think about moringa powder for daily consumption for autoimmune RA? Look, RA is not caused by moringa powder deficiency. Moringa powder can be good for nutrient density as a food source, but it's not going to cure RA. I would say that the popularity of moringa has led to a mass contamination of poor products flooding the market, especially on platforms like Instagram and TikTok. And so I'd be really, really cautious about where you're buying it from. Do you recommend hyperbaric oxygen therapy for mold detox? No, but that's not to say it can't be helpful, Xenia. A lot of doctors like and use hyperbaric on a regular basis with mold patients and mold detoxification. I've just seen enough people in mold recover without the need for hyperbaric. To me, mold is so expensive. When you're in mold, it's expensive trying to figure out why you're sick. It's expensive trying to find the mold. It's expensive trying to remediate the mold. And God forbid you lose your house and all your furniture. And now you've lost, a substantial portion of your wealth. And now you're being asked by a doctor to spend, $3,000 or $4,000 on 20 sessions of hyperbaric oxygen. You can detox from mold without it. It's not to say it can't be helpful, but that's my opinion on it. How weight gain found? I don't understand that question. Let's see. Thoughts on DMSO? I think it can work pretty well for pain. I don't know. Do you have specific use that you're asking about, Joni? I got ALA with biotin, but written that biotin interfere with blood tests. It can. Now, biotin interferes predominantly with your thyroid blood tests. So if you're having your thyroid monitored and you're on a biotin supplement, you should discontinue your biotin supplement for at least a week before getting your blood drawn. Red light therapy for low neurotransmitters, any unconventional ways to raise neurotransmitters? Neurotransmitters, what are they made from? Vitamins, minerals, amino acids. So step one is make sure you have the right nutrition to support the production of your neurotransmitters. And then outside of that, there are a lot of other things that have secondary or tertiary influences. Sunlight certainly can. Red light is part of sunlight. So yes, that can affect neurotransmitter production and regulation, as so can many other things. I have been drinking, let's see, I've been drinking RO water for 6 months. What minerals do I need to get? All of them. A good salt, mineral salt compound or electrolyte compound will suffice for those of you asking about reverse osmosis water. I'd say if you're adding a good salt to it, a salt solution to it, monitor your body for twitches and cramps, because one of the earliest onset of symptoms associated with RO water when the electrolyte balance is shifting is like twitching of shoulders, twitching of eyelids, twitching of random muscles, but also cramping of the feet and cramping of the calves. So if that's happening, consider that, adding more salt or more electrolyte. There's not a magic number. Do I have a protocol that I would recommend if getting sick with a cold or flu? Yeah, we have an immune protocol, Joni. We'll put a link up for you for that protocol. I use an electrolyte liquid in my coffee. I'm waiting on more. Okay, now it's more of a comment. From Edmonton, my son has migraines. Wife in the industry does not believe grains are an issue. Wheat belly bug changed my life. Yes, I hate to hear that because, generally speaking, one of the things that, when your immediate family disagrees about diet and lifestyle, that can be a really big stress. And I'm glad to hear that it changed your life, Ronald. William Davis, his book Wheat Belly is a fantastic book for those of you who haven't read it. He and I had a conversation last week, and we're getting ready to post an interview with Dr. Davis about some really exciting research he's been doing. So stay tuned for that. That's coming your way. Does alpha lipoic acid supplement chelate magnesium? No, not really. All those years of supplementing iron plus with no change, another possible. I don't understand what you're saying there. At what point do I no longer need testing? You got to help me understand what you're saying. I think your age. You mentioned your H button. H button isn't working, but maybe re-ask it. How can TSH levels actually go up when taking levothyroxine with increased dosage? The numbers always seem to be going in the wrong direction. Are you taking iodine or biotin? If you are, it can artificially elevate your TSH. So that's a possibility. Is chicory root good for a coffee substitute? Yeah, it's perfectly fine. Can be. Has a nice rich flavor. When taking EDTA for heavy metal detox, should I be taking anything else? Possibly. EDTA is a great supplemental to pull toxic metal. What you want to be careful of is taking it every day indefinitely, Nina. I mean, when we do detoxification for heavy metal in my practice, we will cycle people 3 days on, 11 days off. So we'll cycle them using EDTA, and we have another product that I like to use called Heavy Metal Detox, which Heavy Metal Detox contains some other ingredients that chelate, but also some ingredients that support the kidney and the liver, because when you're pulling metal, you're pulling things out through your filter organs, and you want to support their functionality. But it's just, chelation is not something you want to do indefinitely, because EDTA also depletes calcium and magnesium and zinc and copper and other minerals. So you definitely want to cycle it. And you might want to consider taking a mineral supplement, away from the EDTA, but again at the same time. So no, don't take them together at the same time. Take them several hours apart. But if you're using EDTA, consider a mineral supplement in the same days. Are there any natural preventative protocols, I think, for herpes in your mouth? Yeah, I mean, lysine, zinc, elderberry, andrographis. Check out, Joni, check out we have a product called Virid that we use for that. Giant cell arteritis is autoimmune. So I recommend that you get tested for the 4 triggers of autoimmunity, the 4, we'll call them categorical triggers: food, chemicals, microbes, and nutritional deficiencies. How to improve my osteoporosis? I exercise and eat low sodium. I do still drink coffee, no more alcohol. That's all great. It's great that you're exercising, but are you doing weight-bearing exercise? Because weight-bearing exercise like deep squats, lunges for the hips and for the spine are very important. Deadlifts can be important depending on your age, but don't overdo it. Those are great ways to enhance the bone density in your spine and hips. As far as nutritional support of bone health, you definitely want to have your vitamin and mineral levels looked at, because if you're low, for example, in strontium, you can exercise all you want, but you're going to have problems with your bone health. So knowing what your nutrition deficits are, it will allow you to customize and support yourself in that type of situation. And then also making sure your diet's dialed in. A lot of bone loss can be caused by gluten, sweet and simple. I mean, osteoporosis, there's a whole new field of science evolving out of osteoporosis called osteoimmunology, which is the study of the immune reactions that occur that are driving the bone loss. And so for many people, osteoporosis is an autoimmune process. And so that goes back to food, chemicals, microbes, and nutritional deficiencies as triggers. And so you want to understand those things if your bone health isn't improving. But again, go back and watch my video on bone scan myths, because you don't want to solely rely on a bone scan to make all your decisions. What about adaptogenic coffee with maitake and reishi mushroom for breast cancer? Nothing wrong with it, but why did you get breast cancer? I think people try to use products to heal their diseases without changing their diet or lifestyle. Cancer is, breast cancer particularly, is what we believe to be an estrogen dominance issue, and where the estrogen is coming from is not the human. It's coming from synthetic estrogens in our environment, the phthalates as an example, the plastics, the pesticides, the cosmetics, the soaps, the shampoos, the lotions that contain these chemical compounds that mimic estrogen and drive cancers to develop. So looking for cause versus trying to take something. Now, there's no harm in taking coffee with mushroom, but I would also ask that company that you're referring, ask them if they do mycotoxin testing on their mushroom coffee. Because if they don't, I wouldn't use it, because mycotoxins can cause cancer. So I wouldn't want to be drinking something every day that was giving me a bolus dose of mycotoxins. Alternative to colonoscopy? Yeah, the GI docs now are running a test. God, gosh, the name is slipping me at this moment. Cologuard is what it's called, and it's a stool test, and it's a non-invasive stool test that measures different inflammatory markers to help doctors understand better whether or not you may have a problem down there. So it's one alternative you can talk to your GI doctor about. Suggestions for soaps and shampoos and toothpaste. Yeah, natural toothpaste that are fluoride free and that are, artificial sweetener free and sodium lauryl sulfate free. There's a few different brands out there that do a pretty good job. Kiss My Face, Jason are two that come to mind. As far as soaps and shampoos, you get you a good goat soaps, naturally made. Find a local market where you can pick some of those types of things up. Those are good quality. And then there's some brands like Castile soap or glycerin soaps are also options that generally are gluten-free and minimal ingredients. Can you get rid of H. pylori supplementing, or do you need antibiotic? So I'm going to say it legally. You don't treat diseases with supplements, Katie. Now, if you want to support your H. pylori with supplements, what I would suggest you look into is some natural bismuth with berberine, because berberine has very strong killing potential for H. pylori. There actually have been human trials where they use berberine and antibiotics and drugs like Nexium, because for H. pylori they use what's called triple therapy, which usually consists of 2 antibiotics and Nexium. The problem with that is antibiotics wipe out your flora, and Nexium stops you from producing stomach acid and causes malabsorption and all kinds of other problems and immune problems. Remember, your stomach is like the gatekeeper for your immune system, and if you wipe out your stomach acid, you become more susceptible to infection. So if I had H. pylori myself, I would use a bismuth and a berberine supplement with a really strong probiotic, something like Ultrabiotic Defense, to defend and support my body's ability to help my immune system overcome. Let's see here. Is there an index with your videos? I was looking for a breast cancer protocol. I don't do protocols for disease in my videos. I think it's irresponsible. It's not to say, we have some protocols that we put together for like colds and flus, things that are not life-threatening. If somebody has a surgery, we have a protocol that people can follow pre and post surgery to help support their healing. But when you're talking about life-threatening disease, there isn't a protocol. There's not like a one-size-fits-all approach. Disease is complex and it's multivariable, multifactorial. And if you don't address it that way, and you just try to take a bunch of random protocol supplements from some random YouTube doctor, that's not going to work out well for you. I mean, it may not work out bad for you, but it isn't going to work out well for you, because you need customized guidance and support when you have a major illness. But a great place to start is diet change, right? Address the what I call the 6 non-negotiables: your diet, your sleep, your sunshine, your exercise, your air quality, your water quality. Those things are not negotiable to be healthy, and everyone can start there for free. If you determine there's no more mold exposure, but urine still shows high mycotoxins, what's the protocol to kill mold living in you? You have to confirm that there's mold living in you. High mycotoxins doesn't necessarily mean you may not be out of mold, but you think you're out of mold. I'll just say it like that. A lot of people think they get out of mold, and they get out of mold into more mold, and then they still have mycotoxin and detox problems because they didn't really escape the nature of the problem in the first place. See it all the time. So don't just assume you have mold growing in you. Now, mold growing in you could be a possibility, and that should be looked at. And you should get with a mold literate doctor who understands that and can run the right tests. Is breast cancer an autoimmune disease? No, not anything I've seen that's convincing enough to make me think that breast cancer is autoimmune. However, I will say this, and I lectured about this years ago at the Truth About Cancer Symposium, autoimmune disease is pre-cancer, right? So if we look at what is autoimmunity, autoimmunity is an immune system that is so overwhelmed by the person's choices that it starts to behave in a manner that's inconsistent with good health. And so chronic inflammation sets in. And then that serves as a distraction for the immune cells to sentry cancer. So cancers can develop more readily with somebody with chronic autoimmunity. So if you think about cancer, think of it more not as an autoimmune disease itself, but think of it more as late stage autoimmune disease that's gone unchecked and unfettered and untreated properly. Is it okay to take magnesium and zinc together? Yes. I mean, foods contain magnesium and zinc. There's a lot of food examples that contain them both. A lot of people get kind of overwhelmed in that supplement realm of I shouldn't take this with this because it won't work or it'll cause malabsorption. And the reality is that most foods that contain nutrients contain an array of nutrients. So worry less about taking them together. And again, what I said earlier about supplementation is if you're taking something because you're deficient in it, take it consistently so you can overcome it, but also incorporate foods that are rich in those nutrients that you're low in so that you have food choices and food options coming in as well. MS, check out some of my videos on MS, Mario. We've seen people get out of wheelchairs with MS. I mean, there's amazing gains that can occur in people with MS. Vitamin D and vitamin B12, top of the list of nutrients that we see very frequently are deficient in people with MS, but you got to change the diet. With MS, the diet has to be changed. Every case of MS I've ever seen clinically has been in a person that has confirmed gluten sensitivity, and when we change their diet, there's just a dramatic improvement. Going through menopause, how can I support my hormones without synthetic hormones? The right diet, the right activity, the right lifestyle, the right stress management. If you still have your ovaries and uterus, then you're still making some hormones. You're just making less. And I think in our world, there's two sides of this coin. I'm not, far be it for me to judge any woman who feels like their quality of life is so poor that they should just suffer. I mean, so don't any of you take this the wrong way or out of context. I think it's a decision that a person needs to make if they're going to do biological replacement, hormone replacement therapy. But a lot of people and a lot of doctors have the attitude, which I don't believe is correct or accurate, and that is they want you to maintain the hormone levels of a 25 or 30-year-old for the rest of your life when you're going through menopause. Menopause is a transition in life. It's the reason we're transitioning is because in women there's obviously a loss of fertility. The body's intelligent innate wisdom says that at a certain age, that menopause needs to happen because we don't want to give birth to babies with defects and other problems because the age of the eggs can become dangerously problematic. So I think we have to honor and we have to respect the wisdom that the body already has and to chase, there's the whole anti-aging movement, which is, let's all chase, everything and try to maintain, our youth indefinitely. And I think that's maybe the wrong way to look at it. I think a better way to look at it would be how can we age gracefully and appropriately and support our bodies in the best way so that we can go through all walks of life and appreciate and celebrate all walks of life and not criminalize a walk of life for what it is, right? And menopause is diseasified. In America, we have just such an industry of pharma that's pushing so many different pills and drugs, and they want to profit off of every stage of life. And you don't want to get caught in that trap. So how do you gracefully age? You follow fundamentals and you own your choices, and you don't give your choices away to strangers, right? Your choices about your health, don't outsource those to doctors who don't live in your shoes and feel the way you feel. Don't just randomly trust people. Think about the advice, get a second opinion. But ultimately, you have 6 core responsibilities you should be following. You should be eating well. You should be exercising, getting outside and getting sunshine and in nature. You should be going to bed on time. You should be drinking clean water. You should be breathing clean air. If you do those things and you surround yourself with people who care about you and who love you and you have great community, that's top priority. If you're not doing those things, do those things first and see what happens. For many people, just doing those things leads to the resolution of the problems that they're having. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Okay, not a question. I also use Boca, which has no, not a question. Knees and legs and feet are feeling tight and sore for months now. Magnesium doesn't seem to help. Started taking CoQ10 and it seems to help. Help me understand what this is. Well, CoQ10 is necessary to generate energy in your muscles. And when your CoQ10 is too low, you can start to develop muscle damage, muscle aches, muscle pains, because the muscles can't generate enough energy to sustain contraction and relaxation. So a symptom of CoQ10 deficiency can be stiffness and muscle pain. This is one of the reasons why we see people taking statin medications. Statins deplete CoQ10. So if you're on a statin or a blood pressure medication, the likelihood that you're depleting CoQ10 is 100%. And if you're developing muscle aches and muscle pains as a result, CoQ10 supplementation can be a very, very good idea. But that's the mechanism. CoQ10 drives the production of ATP, which allows your muscles to properly work. I was laid off, but if I had to choose between gluten test and nutrient test, which should I choose? And I mean, those are like 50-50, Scott. I would say if you're just getting started, I would choose the nutrient test, and here's why. You can go gluten-free without testing. Like, doesn't cost you anything to just try no grain, no pain as a diet. And if you get nutrient testing done, now you'll have an arsenal of information that you can make decisions about whether you want to supplement or how you can change your diet to incorporate more of the nutrients that you're deficient in. So that's the way I would position that and think about it if you're struggling to get them both done. Okay. Well, I think that's an hour and 45 minutes. So you got more than an hour today, folks. I hope you appreciate it. I appreciate you being here. Look, if you're new to the channel, come visit me at Gluten-Free Society. Make sure you sign up there for our free newsletter, where I'll send you a ton of free information about how to overcome autoimmunity and chronic inflammation using diet and lifestyle. If you want to learn more about mold, come visit me at Mold Jacked. As I said, this is the year we're putting together a vast array of resources around mold. And make sure you're on our email list there over at moldjacked.com. Look, I hope your new year is getting off to a great new start. I hope many of you who are here are following along over the next 30 days for our No Grain, No Pain Challenge. If you missed Tuesday's show, go back and watch it. I give all the basic information you need to begin the No Grain, No Pain Challenge. And so I hope to see many of you joining us this year, and I hope to see many of the testimonial outcomes of improved health as well. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you next Tuesday.